This is the Pal Talk News Network.
The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online, a production of paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes, YouTube, Blip TV, and my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. No retribution. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. What a great day today here on the Pal Talk News Network. Earlier, we heard President Obama, watched him live from the Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral, where he kind of reversed himself when he basically suggested that NASA's budget would be cut so far that manned spaceflight was no longer in the future. He was under so much pressure from both the scientific and political communities, bipartisan for this one. He now says that he's no longer planning on sending man back to the moon. Been there, done that, over and done. But he wants to see manned spaceflight continue to an asteroid, which got the scientists there very excited, and to Mars during his lifetime. A real switch in attitude by the president. And then, for the past hour and a half, for those of you who have been with us on the Pal Talk News Network, you saw the first ever, very historic moment in time, debate between the leaders of the three major parties in the United Kingdom in advance of the parliamentary elections, which occur in about 3 weeks. Second portion of the show, we're going to focus on that. But as those of you in the United States know, as do our cousins, for obvious reasons, at the other side of the pond, this is April 15th, tax deadline day, tax day in the United States of America. All across this nation, and especially in Washington, D.C., there have been and will be and continue to be protests organized by the Tea Party. But we thought it would be interesting to bring on an historian and author, an author of 14 books, including one book about the Tea Party. No, not the political Tea Party of today, but the original Tea Party called Founding Myths, Stories That Hide Our Patriotic Past. And his latest book is called Founders, The People Who Brought You a Nation. I'm referring to historian, and as some people have referred to you, Ray Raphael, as Mythbuster. Ray Raphael, welcome to News Talk Online on the Pal Talk News Network.
It's a pleasure to be talking with you.
It's great to have you with us. So our vision of our founding fathers is that they were overtaxed, taxation without representation. They went into Boston Harbor dressed as Indians. Native Americans, and they tipped the tea into the Boston Harbor as a protest against the taxes, and therefore it's a very patriotic and traditional thing today on tax day for us all to go out and protest against Uncle Whiskers, Uncle Sam, the IRS in particular. Is that story an accurate one?
Yeah, well, about half of it is the fact that they dressed as Mohawks to disguise their identity, and the fact that they were very upset, and the fact that they dumped tea in the harbor, and the fact that the repression that came after that led directly to the American Revolution. That is all accurate. Their motivation for doing so, though, has been totally garbled. People have some kind of bizarre sense that the whole idea was that people were upset about paying high taxes. That seems to be the tenor of the protest here. Oh, we're paying or our taxes are too high, so we don't want to pay them, and so we get to throw the tea in the bay. And that wasn't what was happening. As a matter of fact, what they were protesting was a lowering of taxes.
Excuse me. I think you may have misspoke yourself. I want to give you an opportunity to correct it. I think you misspoke yourself. I thought I heard you say that they were protesting a lowering of taxes.
You got it, and I did not misspeak myself. The tax that they were, what happened was they had, for a long time, they had a tax on tea. That was one of the imported items that was being taxed. It accounted for very little loss of revenue for Americans because most people just bypassed it and smuggled tea. And so that was, they just got around that one. And plus, it was very little out-of-pocket money for anybody because what happened is not everybody could afford tea, number one. Just kind of got around it. But the problem is that the giant East India Company, your listeners are going to have to stay with me for a little bit here to unwind this tale of kind of giant corporations and too big to fail and corporate greed and state-sponsored support for this giant corporation, which should be pretty familiar, but we're not hearing a lot about today. I mean, that's sort of, their world was much more similar to our world than we think it was. So the East India Company was struggling. They had overextended themselves, building an entire colony. They literally owned a colony in India, and they also got too much goods. They had 18 million pounds of surplus tea, and they didn't know where to dump it. The company was about to go belly up, and so they were figuring out a way for the state to bail it out because it was too big to fail. It was kind of like our banks or GM or something. If it failed, the British economy was going to crumble. So in that whole talk about how to help these guys out, they said, there were two taxes that they paid on tea, one coming to America and one coming into Britain. They suspended the tax for the giant East India Company going into Britain. That lowered their costs and enabled the East India Company to undersell even the American smugglers. And so what they were protesting was not a raise in taxes. They were protesting this kind of corporate tax break to establish a monopoly to interfere with American trade. That was the direct